Okay, guys, over the years, I've worked with a lot of people applying to grad school, and in addition to helping them with the GRE, I've looked at their personal statements and helped them with those too. So I've noticed over the years that a lot of people will write kind of crappy, for lack of a better word, personal statements on their own because they just don't know how to do it. They've never done it before. So I want to go into some of the ways that will actually make your personal statement crappy. So let's just get right into it. Number one, a childhood story. These are not all bad, but if we begin with a childhood story or we tell a story about when we were like 4 years old, if I was like, when I was 4, I saw my friend fall off his bike. And then you go into a, description of how ever since then you've been all about helping people and now you want to become, let's say a physician assistant. Well, that it's not that believable, right? Because first of all, I have a hard time believing ever since 4 you've been passionate about helping people. And even if you were, it's more relevant to me to hear a story from when you had a little bit more agency, when you were an adult and you did something significant toward that goal or to help people. So childhood stories I don't find very powerful most of the time. Obviously there's exceptions, but kind of tough to pull off. Way number 2, grammar, as I misspell grammar. Grammar mistakes. So hey, you're applying to grad school, dude. you probably should know basic grammar, and even if you don't, no judgment if you don't. You probably need to make sure you get someone to help you edit it. So if you're doing things like on Mondays, I blah, 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 blah. As you can see, Google Docs is underlining my mistake there. Just make sure you're not making grammar mistakes. And there's really no good excuse for this because you got to leave yourself enough time to write your essay and make sure you edit it to the point where it's mistake-free. This is, one of the biggest things people are making impressions of you on, so don't screw up that impression with easy-to-fix grammar and spelling mistakes. Way number 3, and these are kind of in random order, name-checking a professor with no compelling reasoning. So this might be something like, at your school, I hope to work with Professor X or maybe Professor Y. And maybe you even give a reason. Maybe you say because of their genetics research. So if you're just name-checking people because you heard that you had to do that, it's not really helping your cause. What you want to do instead of that is really make a case that your interests really align with what that professor is up to and kind of explain to the reader why that is such a great match. And then it's a little more believable, that you want to work with that professor. But if you're just kind of mentioning a couple professors that you saw on their website, not really good enough. Way number 4, rewrite your resume entirely. So this is super typical to see people do. They want to make sure everybody knows about every single thing they did in the personal statement. And that's, I get it, but you don't want to do that. And the reason for that is you're going to have to cover things so briefly that nothing stands out. And what I like to see people do instead is pick 2 or 3 things. So let's say instead pick 2 or 3 things to highlight in detail. So a nice way to do that is, let's say you had a really compelling story from a particular class at college that you got a lot out of. So you might say, like, in college, here's a little formula I have for you. In college, I did X. I also did Y. So you're really briefly mentioning a couple of things, but the thing that had the greatest impact for me was Z. And then here's where you go into lots of detail about, the Z thing, whatever that thing is. And the reason we do that is it's like, cool, you get to mention a couple things briefly, so it's not like you just did the Z thing. Let's say Z was, a particular research project you did independently from a class with a professor kind of mentoring you. And then that's a great story to tell, and just really tell that story about how that research project went down and what you learned from it. And that's the thing that people are going to remember. So if you try to rewrite your resume entirely, they probably already have a copy of your resume. But even, you just can't afford to put that many things in the essay or nothing will stand out. You just have to pick a few in most cases. Way number 5, be typical. So what I mean by this is, let's just say, I'm going to use the example that you are maybe applying to PA school. Guess what every other applicant has done who's applying to PA school? Probably a lot of the same exact things that you've done. And they're going to focus on the typical things that they've done probably and talk about them. Not to say you shouldn't talk about the things you've done and you shouldn't do typical things. That's kind of important. You have to do certain activities to get into certain programs. But if you focus on the same things that everyone is going to focus on, like let's say, again, you're going for PA, you're like, the focus is just coming across as, I love helping people and I like science. Those are like the top 2 things that PAs are going to write about, or prospective PAs. Now, again, there's exceptions to this. If you're a really good writer, you can pull it off, maybe. But instead, why not give a more unconventional reason that you're applying to PA school, or play up a different part of your background that no one else might play up because they think it's not, relevant. So this is a little caveat here. The lower your GPA and GRE scores and all that kind of stuff, and the less impressive your application, the more you really need to push yourself to take these risks. Because if you're already below average, and you have an average essay, it's not going to really help you, right? So you have to have an above average essay to kind of pull yourself up. So that's why we want to play up unconventional things. And even if you do sort of have a good application overall, why not play up something atypical and actually stand out instead of blend in? We are not trying to blend in this essay. Okay, way number 6, tell instead of show. So this might be something like I would say in an essay like, I'm really hard working and passionate about, let's say, helping people. That makes no impression on me at all. It's not that I don't believe you, I kind of probably believe you, but it's just not illustrated in any kind of compelling way for me to actually see you in action. And what, of course, we need to do is show, don't tell, for the most part. You can do a little bit of telling, but tell me things about yourself after I believe them about you from you illustrating them with a story. So we love stories because stories illustrate, and they let me make up my own conclusion about you through seeing you in action. And stories are compelling. We've been telling stories to each other for millennia. That's how we communicate. Okay, and the final one here, be general. So this is, again, what not to do. We want to be specific instead. So if I say something like, I worked at hospital XYZ and got a lot of experience working with all kinds of patients and doctors. Dude, you're being too general there, right? It's just, sometimes I will see paragraphs where, that's as specific as we get. And it's like, okay, I don't learn anything from that. It's too general for me to even see you in action. Think of it like a movie. Like, I need to be able to picture you doing something to have a story be compelling. And again, it's not like 100% I need that every single time, but wouldn't it be nice if I heard a story that I could vividly picture you interacting with maybe a patient and what it looked like and what you were feeling and just sort of what you're thinking about in that moment? And that, for me, is much more compelling, just like any storytelling would be. So want it to be specific as you can. So these are not the only 7 ways to write a crappy personal statement, guys, but they are common ways, and I've seen them a lot over the years. I know it sounds negative, right? But I'd rather be a little bit negative and make you not do something, and that hopefully will steer you toward doing more of the right thing in these essays. Remember, this is one of the biggest opportunities to stand out when you're applying to grad school. Give yourself some time to really craft that personal statement and really present yourself compellingly to the audience.